Hello, yellers. Welcome back to Why Am I Yelling? I'm your middle-aged menopausal mom host, Krista Rizzo, and today, we're talking about something that's been on my mind for a little while. Let's just say listen to your mother. Not just your actual mother, though yes, her too, but in metaphorical mothers, right? The metaphorical ones, the ones who are in your lives, the elder women who have been through it, who have survived it, and are trying to tell you something important if you just stop and listen. Now, I know when you're in your 20s, your 30s, even your early 40s, the last thing you want to hear is somebody older telling you what they think. Because what could they possibly know about your life, right? They didn't grow up with social media, or some of them didn't, right? They don't understand modern dating. If you're in the dating pool world, I have a friend who is right now, and she's in her mid-30s, and it is not an easy place to be, right? They're from a different time, the older people. I'm one of them now. But here's what I'm learning in this particular season of my life. Now that I'm officially actually one of those older ladies, quote unquote, or middle-aged ladies with opinions, we actually do know some stuff. Shocker, right? And not random stuff. The hard-earned, paid in full with tears and mistakes and success and joy and hard and grief and all the things kind of stuff. So today we're diving into why listening to our elders, particularly our elder women, matters more than ever. And I want to talk about Michelle Obama's recent appearance on Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy, which my husband Will said to me was a very Why Am I Yelling conversation, and I had to listen to it. And I'm a Call Her Daddy fan, so I definitely wanted to listen to it. I just got to it a little bit late. So I listened to it last week, and I've been kind of making mental notes and making notes, paper notes about it. But, it was a conversation about really what wisdom looks like when you're brave enough to receive it, and why dismissing experience is one of the biggest mistakes we as women and humans can make. So grab your coffee and let's settle in and let's talk about it, even though I have water, not coffee. And I'm going to take a sip, so sorry. So let's just talk about Michelle Obama on Call Her Daddy for a minute, please. I have been a huge fan of the Obamas since Michelle and Barack were campaigning back in the 2006-07 years, from the very beginning. I love how she carries herself. I love how she has raised her children in the spotlight. I just love everything about who they are as a couple and how they have their integrity. And I'm a huge fan. I am a listener to her podcast that she has with her brother. And when she was on Call Her Daddy, I knew I had to pay attention and listen. I know she has a book out. I haven't read her new book. I've read her past books. Big fan. But if you don't know Call Her Daddy, ladies, which I'm sure you do, right? Daddy Gang. It is a massive podcast hosted by Alex Cooper. It started many years ago, or not many years ago, a few years ago, I guess. I wasn't a listener back then. It was a sex and dating advice show, and she's much younger than me. So we don't have that much in common in that area because I wasn't dating, and we were just in very different parts of our lives. It was very explicit. It was very Gen Z. It is not the kind of podcast. The past one is not the one that you would picture Michelle or a former first lady to appear on. However, Call Her Daddy has shifted, right? Now it's more of a Gen Z interview podcast. there's some explicit stuff on there because we talk about life, and Alex talks about her life, and she talks about her interviewees' lives and stuff. And so there is some explicit content on there for sure. But, I was excited to have listen to this conversation, right? It was an important conversation about women, about power, about our society. And it's something that we need to be talking more about because, what is happening in the world is just complete insanity, right? So here's what got me. Alex gave Michelle a choice at the beginning of the interview, and she said, we can do this one of two ways, right? Option one is I ask you about your relationship with Barack. We talk sex and dating like the OG days of the show. Or option two, we have the hard, important conversations about what women are facing in the world right now. And Alex, to her credit, could have taken the other route, but she chose option two. Not because option one wouldn't have been a big hit, because it would have for sure, but because she recognized that having one of the most influential women in the world, on the planet, sitting across from her was too important of an opportunity to, waste on gossip. So that's what she did. And I appreciate that very much. And that decision that she made in that moment, or had made prior to that moment, I'm sure, because she was very prepared for her conversation, that is exactly what listening to your mother looks like, right? Recognizing when someone has wisdom that you need more than the entertainment value or the shock value for your show. So kudos to Alex and Call Her Daddy for making that decision and couching the conversation in a way that brought important topics forward, or continued to bring important topics forward that they could talk about. So what did they talk about if you didn't listen to it? They literally talked about everything. Michelle talked about her new book. It's called The Look, which on the surface seems like a fashion book, but it's actually about how women navigate being constantly scrutinized, objectified, and judged by their appearance. They talked about what it was like being first lady. They talked about raising daughters in the White House. They talked about misogyny and double standards and why America still struggles to elect a woman president. And, Michelle has said this. She said it one time, and now she has to kind of keep defending herself to this statement that she said. But she has said very plainly and very matter-of-factly, we are not ready for a woman president in this country. Let that sit for a minute. We're not ready. Now, she got a lot of pushback on that, about that statement when she said it. And she said it before she came on Call Her Daddy. She said it in a much different setting. I don't remember where she was when she said it, but people pushed back and they said, wait, how dare she say that? We had two very qualified female candidates in our last few elections, right? But she wasn't saying women aren't qualified. And this is what you have to listen to your mother, right? She was saying from her personal lived experience, from watching it happen twice, that there's something deeper going on that we're not at this point in time willing to examine. Right? Why are we pretending that this didn't just happen? Why are we pretending that we didn't just not elect two very qualified women in succession when we could have had we could be living a very different story right now, right? We've had two very qualified women run for president. They were not perfect, but neither are the men. Come on. Neither are the men. And the men got elected anyway, right? So why can't we talk about the fact that there's still a gut level resistance to following a woman as a leader? And you know what? As much as I hate to admit it, she's right. And I don't want to be right. I don't want her to be right. I don't. I want to be like, you're wrong. We're so ready. But she's right. She is. Because she has lived it. She was scrutinized for her arms, her hair, her clothes, her facial expressions, whether she smiled enough, whether she looked too angry, whether she was quote unquote likable. She had to be twice as good to be considered half as acceptable. Think about that, women, right? Think about the things that we've had to fight through in our lives, whether it's careers, whether it is with our families or friends, our peer group. We have to be twice as good as the men to be considered half as acceptable. And she's watching from young women go through this. And she's trying to warn us that this isn't over, right? We haven't solved this problem yet. We may have just started to address it because now we're talking about it out loud. Why aren't we ready for a woman? I don't know, right? That's a much deeper conversation than the 30 minutes that we've allotted to this podcast is. But maybe it's something that we can address in a future episode, and we can start peeling back that onion and maybe take it piece by piece. Maybe I'll try to find some guests who can help elaborate on this, who are way smarter than I am. But what breaks my heart, instead of listening, instead of saying, tell me more, what did you see that I'm missing? People got defensive toward her comment about we are not ready for a woman president. They dismissed her, and she said it was that she was being negative or defeatist. When in reality, she was just being a mother, right? She was trying to tell us something important that only someone who has been through it could know. So why don't we listen to our elders? And I've been thinking about this a lot, especially since my mother is no longer on this earth, right? So, and I think about, who the people who have influenced me in my life and my growth and my, personal growth and professional growth and all the things, and the women who have come before me, right? But why do we, especially as women, dismiss the wisdom of older women? Why do we roll our eyes when our mothers give us advice? Why do we think, okay, boomer, quote unquote? Why do we think that's a valid response to someone trying to share what they have learned? And I'm going to be honest, I did this too for years with my own mother. My mother would tell me things and I would think, yeah, but that was your experience. My life is different. I'm different. Things have changed. The world has changed. You don't understand technology. You don't know about evolving whatever stuff. You didn't have this and I have it. And so how could you possibly know about this? And I was partly right in that, right? Things have changed and things are constantly evolving and changing. And I know that I am leaning on my kids or, other women who are younger in my life to help me kind of navigate the new stuff, right? But I was also partly wrong because the things my mother was trying to tell me weren't about the specific circumstances. They were about patterns, right? The human stuff, the stuff that doesn't really change no matter what generation you're in, right? Elder women tell you that you can't change people who don't want to change. How many times have you not listened to that? Right? You can't change a partner. You can't change a man. You can't change this. You can't change this. And how many of us in our lives, in our experiences throughout our lives, have tried to do that, have tried to change people? Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand. Maybe not in my current relationship or my current friendships, because I've grown and I've known, and now I know that you can't change people. It was my mother who told me that, right? There have been women who have said to me, saying yes to everything will leave you exhausted and resentful. We don't listen to that, right? When we're younger, we say yes to all the things. We want to do all the things. We want to be all the things. We want to. No is a complete sentence. But you know what that yes got me when I was in my 20s, 30s, and early 40s? A big fat crash and burn at the age of 41. I will tell you that story on a different day if you don't already know it, right? Our mothers, our elders tell us that the way someone treats you when they're angry is who they really are. Have you heard that one? Who didn't listen to that one? A lot of us had to learn that the hard way. But here's what is really going on, right? We don't listen because listening means admitting that we don't have it all figured out. And especially in midlife, when we're supposed to be grown, when we're supposed to know what we're doing, admitting we still need guidance feels like, or can feel like, failure if you don't know how to couch it in knowledge and education. We also live in a culture that worships youth, that tells us old is irrelevant, that treats aging, especially for women, like something to hide, fix, or apologize for. So when an older woman tries to share her wisdom, we've been culturally conditioned to dismiss it, to think she's out of touch, she doesn't get it, she's different from me. But what if that different time is exactly what makes her wisdom more valuable? What if having lived through things we haven't lived through yet is precisely why we should listen? I think about, things that I have been through in my life and the coaching that I have done in my life and, the support systems that I've built in my life around grief lately. And I think it's because a lot of people are grieving, especially what's going on in the world with, all the just really awful things that are going on. Like we are grieving hard and we are trying to figure out how to keep it all together, right? When, someone who's been lost and had to come out through loss and has had to, come out the other side, the things that those people can offer to you is priceless, right? And I we've just gone through a lot of grief personally in our lives recently, unexpectedly. And so that's kind of been at the top of mind. And it has kind of been playing into this conversation about listening and accepting the knowledge and wisdom of people who have been through things, right? So when you think about where your experience matters, it's not just, in grief, it holds true for so many different parts of your life, in your relationships and your marriage and your parenting and your career pivots, right? In menopause. The menopause, right? In your health, if you're, dealing with aging parents, loss of identity, reinvention, we're all going through or have gone through many of these topics in our lives. And we've had to figure out how to get through it and come through it. The only way out is through. These aren't things you can learn from TikTok, right? These are things you learn by living, by surviving, and by making mistakes and decisions and trying over and over again. And for the women who have already done it, they're just trying to tell us something. They're just trying to teach us things if we would just listen. So let's talk about what wisdom actually looks like. Because I think we have this image in our heads of wisdom being these profound guru on a mountaintop pronouncements. But the real wisdom sounds a lot more like, your mom saying, that man's not going to change, honey. Or it's Michelle Obama saying, we're not ready for a woman president yet, and we need to talk about why. Real wisdom is your aunt saying you can't pour from an empty cup, or your friend saying this too shall pass. It's not flashy. It's not the Instagram quote. Or if it is, it sounds cliche because we've heard it so many times we stopped actually hearing it, right? But here's what I'm learning still to this day in my 9 millionth year on the earth. Wisdom is recognizing patterns that younger people can't see yet because they haven't lived long enough to watch the pattern repeat. Wisdom is Michelle Obama watching two qualified women lose presidential elections and saying, there is a pattern that we are not addressing here. Wisdom is your mother watching you date the same type of person over and over and saying you're looking for someone to fix what your father broke. Wisdom is an older woman at work telling you, don't sacrifice your family for a company that would replace you in a week. And here, my yellers, is the hard truth. Wisdom often sounds negative at first, right? It sounds like somebody's raining on your parade. It sounds like someone's telling you things you don't want to hear. But that's because wisdom is honest. It's not trying to make you feel good. It's trying to make you see clearly. When Michelle Obama talked about the scrutiny women face, about being objectified and judged constantly, she wasn't being negative. She was being honest about what she lived through so that younger women could be prepared, so they could strategize, so they could armor up in the right ways. She talks about her book, Working the Fascination, quote unquote, about turning society's obsession with how women look into a tool for confidence and power instead of letting it diminish you. That's wisdom, because society's obsession with women and how we look, it's warped, right? So what she's teaching us is that as someone who went through hell and came back with a map, she was on the biggest stage with the brightest lights, and instead of retreating when it was over, she gave us the gift of her wisdom. I think about the conversations that I have now with younger women who are in their 20s and 30s, and even in their 40s. And sometimes I hear myself sounding like my mother, my grandmother, or an older woman who I have looked up to in my life. And at first, I hated it. I thought, oh, I've now become the old lady with opinions. But then I realized I am the old lady with opinions, you guys. And some of my opinions are based on having lived through things they haven't lived through yet. And if sharing what I know helps them avoid even one, if it's one pitfall or mistake that they can dodge, it's worth sounding like my mother or a mother. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Listening to your elders doesn't mean doing exactly what they say. It doesn't mean abandoning your own judgment or living their life instead of yours. It means considering what they've learned, taking their experiences seriously, asking, what can I learn from this person who has already walked this road? And then making your own choice, but a better informed one. I'm going to refer back to the young woman that I work with. She's in her mid-30s. She's on the dating scene. She actually said to me the other day, "You are such a mom." And she means it complimentary, right? Like, I'm always looking out for people. I'm always asking questions. I'm always organizing stuff. I'm always like flitting about in the office. And she's like, "You're such a mom." And I'm learning. She has actually said this. "I learn so much from you. I learn from you every day. I'm asking you questions. I want to know about this. I want to know about that." And I appreciate that. And I'm not telling her this is how you have to do it. I'm telling her this is what I did and this is what worked and what didn't work, kind of stuff, right? So how do we actually listen, right? How do we listen to our elders or our mothers in a way that's respectful, but not blindly obedient? Because yeah, you still want to be able to make your own choices and your own decisions, but being well informed is actually smart. So first, ask questions instead of being dismissive. When an older woman tells you something you disagree with, instead of thinking she doesn't get it, try asking, what did you experience that led you to this conclusion that you're offering to me? Because there's always a story behind the advice. And the story is where the wisdom lives. I was very, very close to my grandmother growing up, my mom's mom. Grandma B. And I used to love hearing her stories. She was just a connector, and she had a lot of friends. And I wanted to hear what it was like, living through she was born in 1918, right? The Great Depression and the World War and all the things, like handling the loss of my grandfather as they were about to enter their golden years. It was like the year after my grandfather retired when he passed away, and they were still in their early 60s, right? Watching her reinvent her life. I was 10 years old when that happened, and I distinctly remember a lot of the decisions that she was making that she had never really had to think about making before. There was so much wisdom that I got from her that I still talk to her all the time in my head and out loud when I'm, trying to figure things out, because she was such a large piece of just advice for me. And, that those people in your life are very, very integral and instrumental. And so when people like Michelle Obama say things like, we're not ready for a woman president, instead of getting defensive, say things like, what did you see? What patterns are you recognizing? What am I missing because I haven't lived it yet? Or when your mom says, I don't think that job is right for you, instead of rolling your eyes, ask, what is it about this job that concerns you? Or what do you know about me that I might not see clearly at this moment in my life? Number 2, recognize that wisdom isn't about agreement. It's about information. You don't have to do what your elders tell you to do, but you should at least consider what they're telling you to do. Think of it like this. If someone who's already driven the route you're about to take tells you there's construction ahead, you don't have to take the suggested detour, but you'd be foolish not to at least factor that information into your planning of your travels. Third, honor the cost of the wisdom being offered. Not monetarily, but every piece of wisdom that an older woman offers you, she paid for that, often very dearly. She paid for it in mistakes, in heartbreak, in years lost, in success, in celebration, in dreams deferred, in hard-won lessons. So when someone offers you the benefit of their experience, what they're really saying is, I paid for this knowledge, so you don't have to. And it's priceless. The least we can do is receive that with respect. And fourth, practice the wisdom you want to receive. This is the one that gets me, because I'm in this weird in-between space where I'm old enough to have wisdom to share, but still young enough to need wisdom from older women in my life that are, that have obviously been through it before me. And I have noticed something. The more I practice listening to my elders, the better off I get at offering wisdom to those younger than I am. And the more I practice offering wisdom without being preachy or condescending, the better I get at receiving it from others. So like when I talk to younger women, I try to share what I know without suggesting they follow the same path. Like, here's what I learned when I went through something similar, or saying it, like couching it in that way instead of this is what you should do, right? I'm never going to tell somebody this is what you should do. I'm going to say you make your own decision, but this is my experience. I'm going to share that, right? So like if your mother says something like, trying to give you advice and you're like, instead of starting to say, you don't know because my situation is different, say, tell me more about that. I've definitely been there. Like my mom would try to tell me things and I would dismiss that because she hasn't been there. She doesn't know. She isn't this. She isn't that. And then as I got older and she got older, I realized that there is wisdom in there that she can impart on me. And so I would say, tell me more about that instead of brushing it off. I have 100% done that. And then I have 100% flipped it, right? So think about how you have talked to your own mothers, your biological mothers, and how you have dismissed them instead of learned from them, and then kind of flip it and say, tell me more about that, because that's not my experience, but probably because times have changed, but I want to know what your experience was. Because here's the thing, you guys. One day, if not already, we are going to be the elders. We're going to be the ones with the hard-won wisdom trying to help younger women avoid our mistakes. And we are them in some capacity. And we're still growing into that role because it never stops. We're always going to be older than people. And we're always going to be younger than people. So we should take it on the chin both ways. But if we want the young ones, as I like to say, to listen to us, we need to practice listening to them and to our elders. So here's what I want you to take from this episode. Listen to your mother. Your actual mother, yes, but also your metaphorical mothers. The Michelle Obamas, the elder women in your life, in your community, the ones who have been through it and who have survived. They're not trying to control you. They're trying to help you. And their wisdom, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it challenges what you want to believe, is a gift. Ask questions, honor the cost, receive it with respect, and then make your own choices. But now you can make informed ones. Because we don't have to all make the same mistakes that our mothers did. We can learn from them. We can do better because they told us what to watch out for. But only if we are willing to listen. I think about, Michelle Obama sitting across from Alex Cooper, yell out to you guys, sharing what she learned from her 8 years in the White House, from a lifetime of navigating misogyny and double standards, right? And I think about all the young women watching who could dismiss her as out of touch or who could choose to really hear what she's saying. There are two options there. And I hope they choose to hear. I hope we all do. You should go listen to that episode. That's it. That's the work. Listen to your mother. Thanks for being here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being willing to learn from those who came before us and from me. Until next week, keep yelling, keep listening, keep honoring the wisdom that's being offered. I will be right here with you. I love you.